Hello and welcome to InvestorToday.ca. I'm your host, Dave Glover. InvestorToday.ca is brought to you in conjunction with RBL Communications, your online IR professionals. We're coming to you live from the Chicago Resource Expo. It's Saturday, the 28th of April, and I am joined by Peter Bojtos. I hate to butcher your name, Peter. I apologize. He's the president CEO of Fischer-Watt Gold Company, which trades on the OTCBB under the symbol FWGO. Peter, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Dave.
It's great to have you here. Now, I understand your presentation yesterday went really well. So for those of you that were lucky enough to attend that, I hope you came away with some really good thoughts on what Fischer-Watt is doing. But the first thing I want to ask you, Peter, is if you can provide sort of a brief overview of where Fischer-Watt is and what your project is.
Sure. Thank you very much, Dave. Fischer-Watt is in the uranium space in the southwest of the U.S. It's a U.S. company, trades solely in the U.S., and all its properties are in the U.S., so we're about as American as you can get. Our main properties are in the Red Desert area of Wyoming, particularly low-grade uranium, but very amenable to in-situ leaching, which is a very good way of recovering uranium because it's environmentally quite benign.
Mm-hmm.
We have quite an extensive land property there. We have about 29,000 acres, and we're still at a fairly early stage of the exploration.
Well, my next question is going to be why Wyoming, but I think you've already answered some of that, haven't you?
Well, we love Wyoming. Wyoming, and also Wyoming loves its energy projects.
Right.
Successive governments there have proven that. They have tremendous coal reserves which are being exploited, and most of some very, very large tonnages of coal comes out of there. Gas, oil, coal bed methane, and uranium. They're all produced there. Of the 4 million pounds of uranium that's produced in the U.S. each year, most of it comes from Wyoming.
Really?
Both from traditional, well, it's nearly all in situ leaching now.
Mm-hmm. Which, as you pointed out a moment ago, is really an environmentally safe, if you will, way of
it is.
producing
There's very little disturbance to the ground. You drill injection wells, you inject oxygenated water into the ground, recover, that dissolves the uranium, and then pump it back out to the surface and take the uranium out of it. And actually leaves the aquifer somewhat better than what it started with.
Well, sure, I guess because you're cleansing out a lot of the impurities.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yes.
So what is the potential for locating uranium resources on Fischer-Watt's properties?
Well, we've done some drilling. There's been about $7 million spent on our property, on these 29,000 acres that we have. And we've got a number of areas where we've located uranium, fairly shallow depths, about 250 foot below the surface. But the uranium occurs in long, sinuous trends across that part of Wyoming. It's the style of uranium deposition called roll-front uranium.
Right.
And it follows the old river channels underground. So we have one stretch that's about 28 miles long following this long trend. It's only 10 foot thick, and it's irregular. It's broken as it goes along, but it's there. On that area, we already believe we have a potential of somewhere between 10 to 40 million pounds of uranium.
Wow. Just
from the drilling that we've done. Now, we can't bring that to resource level yet because we haven't drilled it consistently enough yet, or we can't bring it to reserve status, but we know that, A, we have uranium, and we know that we have a large extent of it.
Well, that's going to bring me to my next question, which is, can you make money? Can Fischer-Watt actually be economically viable from such low-grade deposits?
Well, that's the interesting thing about in-situ leaching, or in-situ recovery, as a lot of people call it. Traditional mining, where you have to open pit mine or underground mine, you have to take a lot of waste rock and the ore rock, bring it up to the surface, crush it, and then treat it. And that can cost quite a lot of dollars. Quite honestly, it usually costs about $40, $50 a ton just to do those things, and maybe even up to $100 a ton on some underground operations. When you come to in-situ leaching, all you're doing is drilling injection wells and pumping water down and recirculating.
Right.
So it's the pumping cost. We believe, and if you look at the studies done, the feasibility studies done by Your Energy and Uranerts and other operators in that area, the cash operating cost to produce a pound of uranium through in-situ leaching is about $25 a pound. If you put the capital cost on with it and spread that over a typical deposit, that probably puts another $10 a pound on. So you're producing for $35 a pound, and uranium is selling on the spot market at the moment for about $50 a pound.
Wow.
So there's quite a good margin.
Mm-hmm.
But quite honestly, a lot of the uranium, most of the uranium is sold on long-term contracts, and those are about $60 or $70 a pound right now. So even bigger margin with the long-term contracts. So in situ leaching is a very profitable business at a very low grade.
Right, and as you said, it sort of cleans up the aquifer a little bit as well.
It does that as well.
Mm-hmm.
The water that it's sitting in is not even potable for animals. It's very reducing. It's worse than brackish water, actually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, and again, it's uranium, and so a lot of people are skittish when it comes to nuclear power, especially after what happened in Japan with Fukushima, and you've got other countries around the world saying they're going to be pulling back for environmental reasons. But in the long term, it's probably the most financially viable way of producing long-term energy.
It is. Uranium is one of the greatest sources of energy known to humanity. Mm-hmm. It just has to be handled correctly. And yes, there's a lot of precautions have to be taken. You don't build it next to the sea when you know there's a tsunami coming somewhere,
right,
sometime in the next 1,000 years. Those are kind of, with hindsight, that's the failure of humanity.
Exactly.
On these things. But no, it is a great source. Nuclear power plants at the moment are producing power for for under 2 cents a kilowatt hour. Coal does it for about 6 cents a kilowatt hour. Mm-hmm. When you get into some of the other things, you're up around 12 or more cents a kilowatt hour. Now, the capital cost of a nuclear plant is getting quite steep. It's up in around the $10 billion mark now, right, to build one of these things, whereas a coal-fired plant costs, I don't know what they cost really, but they don't even cost $1 billion to build, unless it's a very, very big one. But things you can do with a nuclear power plant that have not been exploited by humanity are absolutely fantastic, because all we do is produce electricity with them. Mm-hmm. But they can be producing heat, and in fact the Russians have been looking at doing that. They have tremendous technology in powering icebreakers and submarines.
Right. And
they can build a power plant now, offshore, floating power plant, that they park off an Arctic city, and they pipe hot water back into the city to heat the city. At the same time, you can desalinate with these things. Mm-hmm. Imagine if there was a fleet of these up and down the California coast. California wouldn't have a drought problem anymore.
No, absolutely. There would be no shortage of water.
Exactly. And also, you can produce hydrogen with it. And if you ever get onto a hydrogen economy, the only way to create masses of hydrogen is to have nuclear power plants.
Right.
But we haven't got the distribution system yet, like gas stations for hydrogen yet. That's going to take another 50 years. Mm-hmm. But this is where I kind of see the future of nuclear power going, yes, if humanity puts its mind to it.
Well, absolutely. And, as always, I like to give my guests the last word. And I think we've probably pretty much run there, though, haven't we, Peter?
We've done pretty well. But I would like to say, Fischer-Watt has a market cap of about $5 million at the moment. We're looking to expand that. We have 139 million shares outstanding, but about 75% of those shares are held by the top 10 shareholders. So the trading float is actually quite small for that company. Yes, but we'll be looking at getting onto the venture exchange in the not-too-distant future, and that'll expand our markets, and we hope we'll get some increase in the stock.
Well, and we all look forward to your continued success, because continued success for everyone in the economy obviously buoys everybody, doesn't it? Sort of brings everyone up to the next level. I've been talking to Peter Bojtos. He is the President, CEO, Chairman of...
Well, if I can correct you on that, as of a few weeks ago, that has changed.
Okay.
Because when I acquired New Fork Uranium, which has more properties in Wyoming, and with that came the President of New Fork, Jim Boffman, who was an old friend of mine, mm-hmm, and I asked him to run the company. So now I'm an advisor to the company. Major shareholder, but an advisor.
There you go. And the company is Fischer-Watt, which is www.fischer-watt.com. It trades on the OTCBB under the symbol FWGO. I'm Dave Glover. Thank you for tuning in to InvestorToday.ca. We'll see you next time.